Make medicine out of Usnea. I saw in the comments somebody asked, how do you identify it? If you take the green, and pull the green back, do you see that little white cord in there? It's just a wee bit elastic, not very elastic and not very elastic at all now that this one's dry, but that's your identification. It's going to have a white cord that runs down the center of it. So that's how you identify it. Now, let's make medicine. First things first, Usnea is done best through a double extraction. So if you've watched my wild lettuce videos further down on my reels, you know what a double extraction is. If you don't, I'll teach you. Anywho, so double extraction is two processes. It's going to be extracted two ways, and we are going to use alcohol, high proof Everclear, 190 proof, to get out the usneic acid because it is not water soluble. Soluble in alcohol. But there are constituents, polyphenols, some flavonoids that are more water soluble. So we're going to use the hot water extraction to get those out. And then we're going to combine those two products. We're not going to cook it down like wild lettuce. Alright, let's get started. Alright, for the sake of the video, I've already done this. But you're going to take a spray bottle filled with isopropyl alcohol. Spritz everything you're using, okay? So I've spritzed my jar. I also spritzed this one because I'm not 100% sure which one I'm going to need. I think this one. I spritzed my blender. And we let it air dry. Don't ingest isopropyl alcohol, okay? Alright. And then we're going to take our Usnea and we're going to put it in a blender. You could use like a coffee grinder, maybe a food processor. I don't know. I don't have either of those, so something that gets it real small because you want to increase the surface area as much as you can. You want to let this dry before you start this process. So mine's been drying for like 1 to 2 weeks, right? Anyways, throw it all in the blender. All of it, even that stuff in there. Okay. And then we blend it. All right. So normally you would want like a half jar, sometimes a 3/4 jar when you have dry plant material. Depends on what you're using. But with this, I've ground it to a powder. So this is sufficient. So I've got a little more than 1/4 of a jar here in areas. Yeah, about 1/4 of a jar. 190 proof. Finish chopping her off. You're gonna feel it. Some say to the shoulder. I prefer to go all the way to the ring because I don't want anything in my jar. Voila. And then you're gonna take, this is optional. A lot of people do it. I do it. You don't have to do it, especially not with alcohol. Now, if you were using an apple cider vinegar for something, you definitely would because the acid's gonna rust the lid. So you can take some parchment paper, capper, and then you label it. Look, it's already starting to change color. Do you see that? Isn't that crazy? You label it, put it in a cool, dark place for 4 to 6 weeks. Give it a shake every day. That's step 1 of a double extraction. Now, when it's time to do part 2, by golly, I'll do a video on that too, and we'll post it on the page, and you can follow this whole thing along with me. So if you have your Usnea, you can get started with me, and we'll be right on track. Usnea double extraction. This is your part 2 video. First things first, let's gather our supplies. You're going to need a flour sack, a fine mesh strainer, a large measuring cup, a smaller measuring cup, a quart-sized mason jar, and your Usnea alcohol extraction, which we did in part 1. Alright, take your flour sack, put it over your fine mesh strainer. I've doubled mine up. And then you're going to take your alcohol extract and you're going to strain it through this. And this is just me scraping the jar to make sure I get everything out. All right, now you're going to pick up your flour sack and squeeze that thing as hard as you can with your hands. Get all the alcohol out. Then take the Usnea left in the stack and put it in a crock pot. This is a cheap crock pot. I got it from a thrift store for like $4 and I use it solely for this purpose. All right, you strain this in the small measuring cup and you measure how much you have. I have almost 2 cups. So then you're going to take your large measuring cup. This is me just putting it up so nothing gets in it. Take your large measuring cup and add double the amount of your alcohol extraction in distilled water. Make sure it's distilled water. So I had 2 cups alcohol extraction, 4 cups distilled water. Put the distilled water in with the Usnea into the crock pot. And then you're going to turn it on low and you're going to leave it for 24 to 48 hours. 48 hours is up. Take your crock pot, another flour sack, strainer, strain it again. Now, you're going to want to check this periodically over that 48 hours and make sure that it doesn't get above 180. Scraping all of the Usnea out, and then I'm just going to squeeze it again. Careful because it is warm. Again, be careful because this is pretty warm. You can see a little bit of the steam coming off, but it is not above 172. It was 168 here. And 172 is the point that alcohol evaporates. So make sure it's not above 172 when you add your alcohol extraction back, which is what I'm about to do here. All right, then we're getting the alcohol extraction and we're just gonna put it in. Now I put a plate over this and let it sit to cool down so that anything that evaporates hits the plate and then goes back into the bowl. You could wait till it cooled down completely, but I didn't. And then I just put it in a measure cup and I bottle it. And that's pretty much it. And then you label it. And then I'm pouring the reserve back into the quart jar. So this is what I have left over after bottling. Boom, Usnea double extraction. You did it. That's how you do it.